Hello, Devlin Bishop here, and welcome to the Devlin Bishop Show. Do I even have to say that? It's kind of weird. But yes, I guess I will. But Cord is not in the title credit, so I can introduce her. How are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing good. I would be
Good.
doing better, but I was pointing to you, and I know darn well it's probably going to come the other way, so
Yeah,
why
it gets
bother
all
pointing?
mixed up, right?
I'm excited today because I always get giddy when we have a guest in the studio. Well, he's not in the studio, but coming to us via Zoom, and he is a wonderful young man I've recently met. His name is Dylan Cardoni, and he actually hosts a radio show that we're going to talk a little bit about, as well as talking about movie soundtracks and stuff like that. And yeah, I got to meet him on one of our online dance parties, one that we actually tributed to movies, I believe. And we have a mutual friend, and that friend, Kareem, who's been on the show before, said, "Can I invite my friend Dylan?" And we've kind of stayed in contact. I did his radio show. Now he's coming to do my podcast. And yeah, I hope a friendship has been made because we all need more friends. So let's bring him in, Dylan Cardoni.
Yeah. And like, oh, there he is.
There he is. So welcome to the podcast, and yeah, I'm glad that you could make it out for it. I was just telling the people that I got a chance to be on your radio show, and I was so honored. And never in a million years would I think I would ever be asked to be on a TV on a radio show to talk about Grease 2. So people, dreams do come true.
Yeah, most certainly is. That's for sure.
And if you didn't hear it, you can actually go to Mondo Nostalgia's Facebook page and listen to the full show. It's there. And if you get a chance to check out Dylan's show, absolutely. In fact, let's talk about the show right away and then we'll get to know you a little bit. How long have you been doing the show? And well, tell us about the show, first of all.
Well, Vintage Cinema Music is pretty much about classic movie soundtracks from the silent film era. So I wouldn't say like the silent film era, but during the beginning of sound of 1927's The Jazz Singer, throughout the years of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even up to the mid 1960s. So pretty much up to the new Hollywood movement, as well as classic movie soundtracks right up to 2003, which of course, as we all know, it's known as the new millennia, or in other words, digital technology in that year of 2003. Um, I actually, each week it's something totally different from different parts of the soundtracks. I usually do or try to mix up, certain themes each week to try and see if I can get some of the audience, entertained to some of these movie soundtracks, as well as talk about a bit of the history behind the making of the motion picture. Like not just about the soundtrack, but also the movie as well. And also, I had several guests that come on every once in a while, just in case if I can't make up a theme, a guest would come in, every once in a while. It
That's
depends
why I
on
have guests.
what's that.
I said, that's why I have guests.
Well, yeah, that's true, right? And so, yeah, I've been doing this since October of 2019. I've actually wanted to start doing it like earlier, but the old station manager at Mohawk College's 101.5 The Hawk, he wasn't really interested in it at first. But then when I figured out that I wanted to try and pitch it to him again, he emailed me saying that, "Hi Dylan, I'm going to be retiring, and I'll send you over to the new station manager." And so, it wasn't until September, October of 2019 is where I pitched my idea, and he said he loved it. And when would you like to do it? What time and days would you like to do it? I was like, oh, okay. So how about Saturday afternoons between 12 to 2? And he said, okay, it's yours. And originally, that was when Peter Morin's Oldies Without Borders used to be on, but he had to take a break from it, so I
Okay.
took that spot, and boom, that's how vintage cinema music pretty much began.
Nice.
Now it's still on that time in case people want to check it out, right? And it's on Hawk 101.5.
Yes, yeah. If you live in the city of like here in Hamilton or in Oakville or in Burlington, you're able to get it. There's some point parts of the area which the signal is not very strong because we have a very low radio frequency here. So if all else fails, go onto the Hawk website at I think 101.5 mohawkcollege.ca, and you can actually listen to it online instead, of going in your car, listening to it on the radio you know, or at home. So, it's broadcast worldwide everywhere. So pretty much anybody can listen to it,
Which
basically.
is one of the wonderful things about technology is like you can listen to it on your phone now. And I remember there were times I remember being a kid loving listening to the radio, but sometimes I liked listening to like Buffalo stations, and it'd have to be a really nice day to actually get it in and you'd be playing with the knobs. But it's so great that you can now just go online and just press that listen button, and the next thing you know, you're listening to the show you want to hear. And not all that static and stuff too. It's great. And
Yeah, that's for
yeah,
sure. Well, technology has changed a lot since, back in the early stages of the 50s, 60s, or even up to the 70s, right? So,
absolutely. And to get to know you a little bit, Dylan. Now, I've been saying your name Cardoni. Is that right? Am I saying it
yes,
right?
that is correct.
Perfect. I always worry about that, but I thought, oh, I didn't check to make sure I get. So I thought that was because I've heard you on the radio. That's where I picked up the pronunciation. Where did you, let's start even earlier than that. Did you grow up in the Hamilton area?
Yes, I did actually. Well, obviously I was born here. My mother was also born here in Hamilton as well, and so was my father. Also, well, my grandmother on my mother's side, she wasn't obviously born here. She was born in Cape Breton, down in New Waterford in the Nova Scotia area. So, and she came up here since the year of 1950, if I'm not mistaken, because obviously down there was not many jobs, particularly back then, right? So, if you want to get a job, you had to come up to like the big cities like Hamilton, Toronto, Vancouver, because that's obviously the only places that you can get a good job or anything. So, yeah, she moved up here and she met my grandfather because and it's funny because he was also born in Cape Breton and they're both the same age and they went to the same
Oh,
school together. But the main thing is though is that their paths never crossed until they met each other in the 1950s, right? So, it's kind of I don't know how to pronounce it, a one brick short of a load in my opinion.
yeah,
you know?
it's kind of like it was meant to happen. It had to happen at a certain time, kind of
Yeah,
like the
that's right.
movie. It's actually very much like the movies in some way. I I look at life a lot through the movies, so I have a feeling you probably do too a little bit.
Oh gosh, all the time. Well, hey, most of the time, movies, particularly back then, even to this day, there's always a life lesson there, always.
Absolutely. My dad always taught me even the worst movie ever, you can still walk away with something from it. And I've always looked at movies. I think that's why I have a love for all kinds of movies because it's just like, yeah, that was a horrible movie, but you know what? I'm going to remember that one part, or that actor was pretty good, or something like that. Where did you get your love of the movies from?
Actually, it was all thanks to my mother that got me interested into classic movies. She did have like several VHS tapes, like the original Yours, Mine, Ours back in
Oh,
1968.
wow.
I always watched it all the time. I always thought Lucille Ball was like, the comedic genius, and still continues to, even after her passing. Also, The Wizard of Oz was also another movie I think for all of us, watched it when we were, in childhood years and whatnot. Also, she also got me into a lot of the beach party movies with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello, to the Gidget movies with the original with Sandra Dee and James Darren, to, a whole bunch of, magnificent movies. So that's pretty much how my love for movies actually came to be, it was all thanks to my mother. And well, she's not really like a huge fan of classic movies, but she does like some. I can
Yeah, yeah.
tell you
And
that. So
it was a gateway for you to discover more of them.
yeah, that's right. Well, Turner Classic Movies, that's in the States. Like, I mean, TCM, didn't actually come up here. It was only nationwide in the United States. It didn't come up until, I think, 2006, where the channel was also, or the feed actually came up here into Canada during that time period. So, you know, yeah,
Yeah, I wish we had more of that stuff. I know a lot of times for classic movies, you have to wait till late night movies or something like that. And unless it was a really big name like Gone with the Wind or Casablanca, they might put that earlier in the night. But something weird like a Marx Brothers movie or the Beach Party movies, you know, City TV used to run those at, of 1 o'clock in the morning when they had nothing else to show. And it's like, sometimes it's hard to stay up that late. But we're talking to the olden days when they used to
yeah,
run up.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and I love hearing when a parent actually inspires a kid because my dad definitely got me into the movies too. So it's lovely to see that, and I can tell you have a respect for your mother because the couple episodes I have heard, you've played requests by her, and she's got a really great taste in music. I can tell just from the little bit that you've told me too. So that's great.
Well, she's mostly a fan of all the soft rock 70s music, that was her thing, that was her favorite era back then. She never liked any other, music genre except for, the 70s soft rock like Hall and Oates to Neil Sedaka to Carole King to Glenn Campbell, all the good stuff from that, particular decade.
And what does Dylan like to listen to in his spare? I know we're talking soundtracks a little later in this set, but what would you listen to that isn't soundtracks?
I would listen to, pretty much the same thing as my mother. Again, she also got me into the old, TV shows and the old 70s soft rock music as well. So, that's kind of like my big thing, similar to what she did. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I love a variety of music. I've introduced Porter to most of the music, I think, because if you listen to one of my mixes, well, you haven't gone to one of the dance parties, but if you ever see them, it's a mix of music, 50s, 60s. I love the 70s and right up to new music. I still listen to new music because there is a lot of good stuff out there. You just got to search it out and stuff. And again, technology is a beautiful thing because it's easier to find a lot of stuff. Can't just rely on the radio station that's playing it
that's
and
right.
stuff.
Well, plus, if it wasn't for technology, hey, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, and that's, you sound like, I like when I created Mondo Nostalgia, it was because I realized that, we needed some nostalgia in our life. And I think we always come back to nostalgia. But I remember when I was talking to Kareem about it, I mentioned we were mutual friends. Uh, I told him that I think nostalgia is what really makes us as people. And people don't really think of that, but we're kind of influenced by the movies we watch and the television and music. I know we don't want to inspire it, but how many times have we learned a lesson from old stuff and that? And especially during this time, I love going back and watching older stuff. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to put on a new movie, and then I talk myself out of it and put on an old movie or some old TV show. And your love for Lucille Ball, me and my partner have been watching all the Lucy shows like for the last several years. I Love Lucy. We did all of the Lucy show, and we're almost finishing Here's Lucy. So yeah, I'm even at her crazy and worst, I still think she's hilarious.
just one of the
um,
best, that's for sure.
have you must have seen the movie Mame with her?
What's that?
Have you ever seen Lucille Ball in Mame?
I think I did like a long time ago. I don't
Yeah,
remember it, that much about it, but
yeah, we
I
watched it.
always thought that she was pretty, sophisticated, pretty
Yeah,
funny within that movie, you
yeah,
know.
it's a weird movie. I did a misunderstood movie about it because I have kind of a love-hate relationship with it. It's a weird movie, but I was just interested because I've only met a couple people who've actually seen it, and we just watched it a couple months ago. I think it was New Year's Eve even. We put it on something like that, and I had to do a misunderstood movie about it because it's very different. Yeah, yeah, and I'm surprised I waited so long to see it, but sometimes movies slip away from you. So. Now, one thing that interested me about your show that was is you have lots of big guests on there, and do you actually go out and seek them?
Do I actually go out and see them?
Seek them? Like, do you contact them to try to get interviews? And where do you get the confidence to do that? Because that's amazing.
Well, when you watch a lot of movies, do a lot of research, that's the big key of, finding guests, right? I actually have a little bit of a site. I think it's, if you ever heard of IMDb Pro,
Yep.
that's how you can obviously get all the celebrity contacts, either their agents, their managers, their publicists, through there. And I did try, even like before my show, when I was doing my documentary at Mohawk College, trying to figure out a way where I can get a hold of them. And my professor, at the time, who still is teaching at Mohawk, he had an account of IMDb Pro. So, he was able to get some of the contacts and everything about it because I didn't know about it at the time until he told me
Mhm.
about it, right? So, and when I was doing my show, I want to, have like a sort of like a free account because obviously, that you have to pay monthly, like almost $200 a month,
Yeah.
right? And that's, that's considered a lot of money, right? Especially if you can't really afford it.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, I had a few celebrity guests, 13 so far, and hopefully there will be more in the near future coming out.
Nice.
Yeah, they all brought something, unique and interesting, to the show or to the table, to say the least. So, yeah, it depends on who you're going to contact. You can email like over 100 celebrities, and only five will get back to you saying, "Yeah, I'll do it," and some will say, sorry, not available for an interview, too busy, but thanks so much for reaching out." And it's like, "Oh, okay," you know.
But it's good that you concentrate on the five that email back because that's what you got to do, right? Persevere.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you gotta take what you gotta get, right? So, and that's the main thing.
Out of all the, like you said, you had 13 celebrities on there. Who is the one that you enjoyed the most talking to?
Oh gosh, that's actually a pretty difficult question. Obviously, I do like interviewing Barry Williams. Who played Greg Brady on the Brady Bunch.
Nice.
He was a pretty good interview. At first I didn't think he was gonna do it because I did hear rumors about him that he's not supposed to be very nice. He's like a snob and whatnot. But once I got the email from his wife, who's also his manager, saying that, "Hey, Dylan, I'm Tina, Barry Williams' wife. Barry said he would like to do this," and I told my mother, and we were both looking at each other like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I didn't think he was gonna do it. And then when I talked to him, because the interview, because they asked for a time, right, of how long the interview is gonna be and
Yeah.
how long it's going to air on the show and whatnot. And I said, well, 15, 20 minutes, right? Because that's, to me, that's the most maximum.
Yes.
And when we were talking, he was very good, and also he asked me because the reason why I contacted him was because, he was coming to Hamilton Comic Con back in
Yep.
2019, that, well, obviously that was the last one before the pandemic, absolutely struck and can't have Comic Cons for a while, right? So, he asked me, "Oh, are you gonna come on down to, because I'd love to meet you." And he said, "I wish I could, but I just couldn't afford it, right?" And I heard that also the Hawk was gonna go to do some stuff. at the Hamilton Comic Con. So I asked my station manager if there was tickets or a pass for both my mother and I to get in, right? Because and I explained that Barry really wanted to meet me, wanted to thank me for having him on the show and everything, and he said, "Okay, it's a deal," right? So he gave us actually two passes to go in, and boom, I met Barry Williams, and he was
Nice.
very friendly, very nice. Got our picture taken with him, and
I saw
you know,
that on your website. I saw that on
Cool.
your Facebook. It was awesome, and I couldn't believe it because I am a huge Brady fan, all forms of it. So yeah, that's awesome.
and
And it's oh,
sorry,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it was also the same day as where I met Mike Quinn, who plays Nynum in the Star Wars franchise. Because I also emailed him before Barry's manager actually got into contact with me, and he said he wanted to do it, and said please let me know, and we'll get together and do the interviews. So when I went to the Comic Con, this was like before Barry came out and we introduced ourselves and whatnot. He said, "Oh yeah, that's right, Dylan. I remember you now. You want to do the
Nice.
interview now?" I'm like, before all the people starts coming in, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." And so, boom, there you go. And I asked him questions about Star Wars. What was it like working with Billy D. Williams in a few of those scenes and the
Nice.
Millennium Falcons.
Awesome.
I tried to, ask him about, you know, the recent Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker that was supposed to be coming out in December, which obviously it did. And he said, sorry, can't tell you,
Yeah.
it's under wraps, top secret, you
Yeah,
know?
Mickey Mouse is going to be coming after him if he says anything wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember the 2019 Comic Con too. I believe that's when I got my trifecta finished. Uh, I had a dream of getting the three Dukes of Hazard, John Schneider, Catherine Bach, and Tom Wopat. And Tom Wopat had to cancel the year before because of a situation. And I already had John Schneider, who is like one of my all-time favorites, and Catherine Bach, and I was upset because I didn't get the Tom Wopat one. Then he showed up the next year, and he was just awesome. He really made up for the fact that he wasn't there the year before, and yeah, it was great. And I wanted all three of them. I was just happy to get John Schneider's, but I thought, wow, I'm going to go for all three of them now because I heard Catherine Bach was coming. Because as
Well,
you
yeah,
can
because
tell,
they were the main cast of the Dukes of Hazzard, right? So why not,
right?
try
Well,
and get
John
all three of them
Schneider,
together?
growing up, John Schneider was very important to me, and when I got to meet him, it was I was very starstruck, and I heard like he's a really down to earth guy. So you always get a little leery meeting, people that you really like. But I heard that he was really. I knew somebody who worked. He was in Canada doing some kind of TV movie or something, and I knew somebody who was an extra on it, and remembers saying he remembers John Schneider would actually come and eat with the extras instead of being with the cast, and said he was just absolutely pleasant and stuff. So when I met him, he was just so phenomenal. So it was really great to meet him, and yeah, and then I eventually got my trifecta, I called it. But we're moving into TV zone. I can tell you, Dylan, you and I are going to be able to talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
And
that's for
Corda
sure.
too. And
Oh
Corda
yeah,
will nod.
I'll nod a lot. Yes.
I swear she does talk. She does talk. She just likes when we have guests so she can be quiet.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
get her
okay.
talking. We'll get her talking.
Yeah.
So let's
Yes.
talk about some soundtracks because you deal with vintage music.
Well,
So what's your
I thought you still
right?
want to go on to more of the my favorite celebrity guests.
Oh, if you want to talk about that, absolutely. Sure, let's do that.
Well, yeah, so it was those two. I think a fan favorite I think a lot of people liked listening to was my interview with Dawn Wells, play Marianne from Gilligan's Island.
Very
That
nice.
one, like you with the John Schneider from the Dukes of Hazzard, I was also starstruck to get a chance to interview Don for Vintage to the Music because,
Nice.
for one, I was a big fan of Gilligan's Island back at 2005, 2006. Had all three seasons, watched them every day, all summer long, and I was addicted to it. So that kind of came in for I think over a year. Being addicted, trying to get that out, but I couldn't because I loved it so much at the time. Um, when I
Favorite
got a
show of
chance
mine.
when I got a chance to interview her, she was, it didn't feel like an interview at all. It just felt like a conversation. It just felt
Nice.
like, hey, she just wanted to talk, get to know each other. It's like, do I know you, or hey, do you know me?
Nice.
Stuff like that. It's like, hey, it's like I knew this person, right? And we made jokes a little bit about, you know, Gilligan's Island a little bit and whatnot. So, and she said, the year before she died, she told me, Dylan, thank you so much for having me on your show. Yeah, if you want to do an interview, you can use this number and we'll talk. I'm like, what? Really? Oh, okay. I'll use it if there's some sort of theme or anything on the show. I'll get in contact with you, right?
I'd be making a theme. I'd be
Yeah.
making a theme.
Another one of my favorite interviews, I think, was Barbara Eden from I Dream of
Oh,
Jeannie.
Yes.
At first I didn't think she was going to do it, but thankfully she did, and I was a little bit nervous about that because obviously since the pandemic had closed the Hawk and everything, how was she supposed to, get in contact with me in terms of a phone call or through Zoom? And I mentioned Zoom, and her publicist said if you can send us a number and everything, we'll get her on for you. So, of course, the Zoom numbers, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to click this, you have to click that, and everything. So, I just thought that she wasn't going to do it at our precise time because the interview was at 2 o'clock. She suddenly came on and she said, "Hello." I'm like, "Hi, Miss Eden. This is Dylan. How are you?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm doing good." And then she went like this. Whoo, that was a trip, because you're clicking all those numbers and you never did anything like that before. So,
yeah.
and again, 15, 20 minutes. And, that was a pretty good interview conversation and whatnot. So, you know,
That's great.
so yeah, those are one of my favorite interviews.
You're almost
And
ready to do vintage cine television music
yeah, that's right.
because those
Yeah, that
three are
does
all
seem like it.
more for. Like I knew Barbara Eden did some movie work too. I think before I Dream of Jeannie, I think I remember seeing her in the movie Harbor Valley PTA.
No, that was actually after I Dream of Genie.
Yeah,
That
I
was
know, but I'm saying when I was a kid, I saw that before I saw her in a movie.
Oh.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, she did a lot of movies even like, before she did I Dream of Genie. She did Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which of course also became a successful TV series. And me and her, we talked about that, talked about Irwin Allen and
sweet.
Peter Lorre and whatnot. And, she was also in Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, I think that's how you name it,
Yeah, I
with
believe it is.
Tony
Yeah.
Randall. So she appeared a lot of movies with him, including The Brass Bottle. But yeah, she she was one of the greats, and hey, still continues to be even to this day.
Nice, awesome. That's incredible. It's good that you took the chance because, as you said, some of these you weren't sure were going to happen, and they did. So that's great. Can't wait
Yeah,
to
that's
see what
right.
I can't wait to see what you have in future episodes. Um,
Well, I think I'm getting Angela Cartwright, who played Brigida Von Trapp in The Sound of Music, and Penny Robinson in Lost in Space, and
what are
again,
we currently watching? I
and
was saying to
again,
Corda, what are we currently watching right now?
Yeah, we watched.
Lost in Space.
the original.
Yeah, the TV show. We're on
Good.
the final season right now.
Mhm.
That's why when you said the name, I started smiling because I know she's also from The Sound of Music, but we're enjoying her currently. Except she's on the season, she's not really on that much.
Yeah, that's for
but
sure.
it is still good. That's awesome. That is great stuff. So it's obviously you enjoy doing this.
I
Hopefully you
still
get to
do.
hopefully you get to do it for a very long time. Do you have any other like plans that you want to do? Like I know you're working on documentaries and stuff like that. Is that what your game plan is or your future goals?
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah, well, I want to do the radio show just to give it like a test run in my personal opinion, so that way, because I always want to do the radio show of vintage cinema music.
Nice.
But yeah, I am currently writing a screenplay as well as a TV series, but that's still currently in development. I still haven't thought of in terms of Act One, Act Two, and Act Three yet, but I pretty much
Yep.
got an idea of what I want to go into that direction. So yeah,
Very cool. That's good. And now's a good time to do it because we have so much time on our hands and stuff like that.
yeah, especially during this pandemic,
Absolutely. Yeah. So, let's talk a little cine music here. What are some of your favorite movie soundtracks? Like, I know you probably have a ton of favorite movies, but what's like a soundtrack you love to put on? Like some of your favorites, like just
Oh,
for just any time that you just want to feel good.
oh my gosh. Whole
I
bunch
know.
actually, and it is a little difficult. You are right, it is a little difficult to pick something. It's not like, or actually like trying to pick something out of a hat, right?
Well, it's like
Um,
yeah, picking your favorite movies is hard because some days it's like, well, these are my favorites, but that was also my favorites and stuff like that.
um, I think one of my favorites will have to be the Mary Poppins soundtrack because, it does feel, hey, it's magical, it just does, right? It makes you feel happy, it makes you smile because, hey, who doesn't love a good Disney soundtrack here and there, right?
Yeah, and
Uh,
I always had respect for the Mary Poppins soundtrack, but what I what was the movie that came out with Tom Hanks as Walt Disney?
oh, Saving Mr. Banks.
Saving Mr. Banks. When I saw that movie and they showed them working on the soundtrack, it made me even enjoy the soundtrack even more because you learned little things about how they crafted it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also interesting to see how she was so dead against it as well and gave us some of the most memorable songs like in the Disney library. So yeah, wonderful choice. But I always recommend that movie, whether you're a fan of the soundtrack or the original movie, because I remember watching that movie and I had to see the movie again immediately. And I love movies that remind you of your love of other movies. So yeah, great choice.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, it was all thanks to Robert and Richard Sherman that, who are fabulous, film composers and film songwriters, that, made, you know, the movie possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Another one of my favorites will have to be, I know this is kind of, far fetched a little bit, but I
No such
always
thing.
loved, I always loved the Jewel of the Nile, that soundtrack. When the going gets
Really?
tough,
Very
the tough
nice.
get going. I
Love
thought,
that song.
that's one of my favorite songs from any movie of the 1980s. To be quite,
Really?
to be quite honest with you, yeah, because I love that beat. I loved Billy Ocean's voice, at the end of the movie where they're just sailing off and Danny DeVito is, acting funny, left behind,
That's
with
awesome.
the Arabian people,
I love that song and I love both those movies. And yeah, it's nice that you chose a song like that because that's a great song. When I was in the 80s, I was a teenager, and I remember I was for a very small time in my life, we put a rock group together. And we wrote songs, me and the lead guitarist. And I remember he said a line that goes along with your song because I always thanked him for introducing me to people like Neil Young and Crosby, Stills and Nash because he got me into that kind of stuff. And he always joked, and thank you for getting me into Billy Ocean. And he always said it kind of funnily, but he always liked, especially when the going gets tough, because it was such a fun but positive and a little bit cheesy, but he always said, "You got me into Billy Ocean," and I always said, "Okay, I know you're joking about that, but I also know you like that song." So I love hearing from that, and it was a big hit.
It
So,
was.
well, I
Yeah.
will have to remember that if you show up for one of our '80s nights, and we'll have to put that one on for you because that would be a
Yeah,
good
that'd be
dance
good.
song too. Awesome.
Another soundtrack that I really like is Cabaret back in 1972. I loved it a lot. I loved, Liza Minnelli's, singing within that movie. And, just like her mother, Judy Garland, right? She knows how to, pick up a good tune. It's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, right?
Yeah, I think Corda, you went we went to Cabaret. I saw the movie with you. I had seen it already, but the Westdale re-showed it just before the pandemic. And I remember I always loved that song and performance. That song, I never realized how much that song. I recently, a friend of mine kind of asked me to come up with my 50 favorite songs. And it's hard, like it's hard. So I went really personal. And Cabaret was actually in it, the Liza Minnelli version. And the reason why is I always just liked it, but I had a friend's mother pass away, and she had a life party for her. And her mother's favorite song was Cabaret. And she said at this one particular time, she wants everybody, she put the lyrics up on the screen, and she wanted everybody at the party to sing at the top of their lungs, Cabaret. And I really listened to the lyrics and realized just how amazing a song that was about how short life is and why take so much time, just live your life to the fullest. And yeah, and I such a respect. And seeing it later in life, the performances, even Joel Grey and Michael York, who
York,
does,
yep.
yeah, because he didn't do a lot of the singing in there, but he's just as wonderful. And of course, Liza, what a star-making performance from her. And yeah, it was great. So wonderful choice. Yeah,
And
keep
I
them
think
coming. This is great. I love it.
that's right. We can do this all day if you want.
Yeah, well, maybe not all day, but we can
Yeah,
always have you on again, which is always
yeah,
a plus.
that's right.
No,
I think
this is wonderful. We're already talking about stuff that, well, I certainly didn't expect Billy Ocean, but if we get one person to go listen to that song,
that's right.
we have succeeded today, Dylan.
That's right. I think we did.
Now, I
And I
knew
think,
you're a big Disney fan, right?
oh gosh, always have been.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a Facebook stalker. When we became friends, I looked at your photos, and I saw that you and your mother went to Disney. But I've also noticed you play a lot of Disney on your radio show too, which is not a bad thing at all. Especially the vintage stuff. They always have had a wonderful relationship with music. And yeah, and yeah, so it didn't surprise me when Mary Poppins popped up first for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends on, like I said, depends on the theme. It's like, oh, okay, I'll add that, that theme of Mary Poppins. It's songs about, sugar or candy or sweets. It's like, oh, okay, I'll use that song
Yeah,
onto the show, right? So pretty much depends on the theme, of the movie music. And I would just grab like a Disney too. It's like, oh, okay, I'll put that in there. I'll put this in there. You know, put it
yeah.
together, and then voila, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's one thing I love about your show is that you go right into like different stuff that it's like, wow, I've never heard this being played on the radio. Like you played stuff from the Fortune Cookie, and you got to be a real cinephile to remember that movie because Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau had done so many movies together. You said name some of them. The Fortune Cookie might not even be in the top five for most people. So the fact that you were playing music from that is great. And then you'll play like I've heard you play stuff from West Side Story and little. I love that that you have such diversity and it's a great show for that. Is there any soundtracks that you think people would be shocked that you listen to, or yeah, we'll go with that one first, and then I'll ask you the other one.
Oh, so you're saying like soundtracks that people are shocked?
that people would be shocked that you like.
Oh gosh, all the time, you know. um, even when I was at Mohawk, I'm like, hey, this is a great movie, it's one of the best, and people are like, oh, okay, because there's because a lot of people, particularly at my age, they don't watch classic movies. They're only
No.
interested in like movies today, right? Like the Bourne Legacy to the
Yeah.
Avengers and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, love
Yeah.
the Avengers as well. I think anybody who are big Marvel fans that love those action packed superhero movies, but every time I mention about like either Gone with the Wind or Gypsy or Gigi or any of the other Best Picture nominees and winners, I'm like, this is something worth recommend because, if we're in the broadcast television program or if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to go back and
Yeah.
watch, some of this stuff to learn, okay, this is how this technique was, invented. Oh, look at that, Citizen Kane, like I mean that low key angle, not the low key angle, the low lighting effects, from the backgrounds or
Yeah.
or the Dutch angle shot, from the third man, and these are the type of movies that you have to watch, right, in order to become a filmmaker, right? Because you
Absolutely.
yeah.
And a lot of the new movies are so inspired by whether it's screenplay writing or, as you said, camera angles or specific things. Like a lot of times you're watching it like, didn't I see that in a movie before or something like that? And it's important, like as you said, whether you're going to learning about film or if you want to make films, it is like I remember. My big thing was I liked bringing people over and showing them cult films and harder to find films, because sometimes I'm shocked when people don't know what I consider that's a well-known cult film. I'm surprised you don't know it. Like I remember a person who's a fan of Tarantino, and Tarantino brought a lot to film, but he also borrowed a lot from film. And I remember showing a couple people Faster Pussycat, Kill Kill, Russ Meyer, and basically they were like, wow, Tarantino must have loved this film because there's a lot of stuff that I go, yeah, you can tell that and that's how he found his love of film, working in a video store and renting a whole bunch. And sometimes you got to take chances,
That's right.
and
Well,
go to the
also,
past.
he mostly made a lot of movies, during the beginning of his career as low budget, independent production movies, and he was actually the very first, pioneer to actually making sure that, hey, low budget independent movies, particularly during the 90s and all the way up till today, can be successful, you don't have to make $100 million, big budget, movie in order to, for it to be successful. Now, a lot of movies, even like low budget movies, are in fact still successful, and even to this
Absolutely.
day.
Absolutely. We still see indie films that come out of nowhere, and I'm always intrigued by them too.
I mean, the Oscars, that's pretty much how most of the movies been nominated. Not big budget or anything, but very low independent box office successes, that usually get up at the Oscars.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here because this is one that you might have to think about. But is there a movie that you don't like, but you think the soundtrack is pretty good?
Hmm. Very, very tough.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
Yeah, that's,
These just pop in my head, so I'm sorry I didn't give you a notice for it. But
yeah, this one is, pretty much something I need to think about. Let me think. Hmm. Very, very difficult.
all right, I put
Um,
you on the spot. If it pops into your head anytime we're talking, just let me know. Because sometimes you see a movie and you're just like, I didn't like that movie very much, but I really like the music in it, and it's always weird. Because a couple times I've gone out and bought a soundtrack, and I'm like, I thought you didn't like this movie. Well, I like the music in it. I like I'm not a big Forrest Gump fan, but I love the soundtrack. There's so many good old songs in it.
Yeah, that's for
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and I don't mind them. Like a lot of people, don't. Some movie fans are not the biggest fans of like albums that just kind of are like greatest hits, like a.
Yep.
But I actually like some of them because it's kind of like nice getting, and that was a 2 disc set with music from the 60s right on to the 70s and 80s a little bit. And I just thought it was a great soundtrack. As I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, but the soundtrack I can listen to over and over again. But yeah, some of my favorite soundtracks. No surprise, Xanadu. I know a lot of people don't love the movie. I do love the movie. I actually, if
I
I
know a
had,
couple people that don't like it, but it's like, hey, like I mean, the music in there is fantastic. From Olivia Newton-John,
well, that's the whole
or
thing. The movie
and
bomb.
everybody's like Gene Kelly, like really? He's supposed to be, the big MGM, famous Hollywood celebrity, and he's in a movie that's terrible. Like, you know,
Well, it's funny because Xanadu flopped, but the soundtrack was huge.
yep.
People bought the soundtrack because they liked the music, Electric Light Orchestra, Olivia Newton-John. It was great. And it's funny, if you ever get a chance to look at the backstory of Xanadu, it's quite interesting. Because they did get Gene Kelly, but originally he said that he would not sing or dance in the movie. So here you have this legend, and he will not dance in a musical. And eventually, when he came on the set, he just took the choreographer Kenny Ortega, who went on to choreograph tons of movies, direct movies. He basically, Gene Kelly said, "If I was going to dance, what would you have done?" And apparently, they snuck off into a room for an hour, and Kenny Ortega was telling him, "Well, you know that thing you did in American Paris? We might do a little of that." And Gene Kelly was apparently teaching him all the like his. Because apparently Gene Kelly was really a tough choreographer. He was like, "Got to get it right." So when he came out an hour later, he said, "Okay, I'm going to do a song. Me, Olivia, the choreographer, and whoever you need to film it, and that's it. Nobody else on set, but I will do a song." So that's why we got that lovely "Whenever I'm Away from You" thing. That it was because he respected the choreographer. That the choreographer actually studied his movies. I think helped a lot, and so Gene Kelly was okay. We'll do a song, and then the fact they got him on roller skates. Come on. I was in his late 70s, 80s at the time he did Xanadu, and they got him on roller skates, and that was him. It's not obviously not CGI'd or anything. I was so impressed.
Well, Gene Kelly is, known to be, a hardworking, choreographer and a director, particularly during back in the 40s and 50s, and he's directing the movie, he's the boss, like, I mean, it has to be spot on, right? It has to be, perfection, and because, he loves hard work,
Yeah,
even though he's making the movie or he's acting, he loves it, believe it or not. And if you ever want to be on this team, that means you have to, like hard work too. And I remember, I think it was, during the backstory, I don't know if you ever heard about Singing in the Rain, where Debbie Reynolds, first got her big start in the movie of Singing in the Rain. And, with her character, she's supposed to be a talented dancer. Well, Debbie Reynolds is obviously a good singer and a good actress, but she didn't really know how to dance, that well. And every time she tried, Gene Kelly pretty much was being a little bit, over the top a little bit arrogant, towards her, right? And so, it was all thanks to Fred Astaire, who actually found Debbie Reynolds crying behind one of the backstages, on the studio lot, and he pretty much taught her, the ways of how to be, a dancer, right?
nice.
So yeah, yeah, Gene Kelly, like I mean, even though he's one of the greats, but he was tough. He was
Yeah, he
tough.
Yeah, and it shows. Like when you see his dance sequences, you can tell they're beautifully choreographed. It's flawless in some ways. They did one of their last movies. They they were the hosts of I don't know if you remember, they did a whole bunch of movies called That's Entertainment.
I've seen the first two actually.
Yeah,
They were
they
on TCM a few times. You know, like they usually do it every year, like before New Year's Day. They always
yeah.
play a big marathon of it on New Year's Eve. So
Well, they
you know,
either hosted one of the That's Entertainments or one that was called That's Dancing. And it was Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. And Gene Kelly said to Fred
I think
Astaire,
it was the second one actually.
the
The That's
second,
Entertainment Part Two, where they come,
nice.
come in and they talk about it, and then all of a sudden you see clips of all the old MGM musicals that they played from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and then
Yeah,
they come back and they continue doing a song and dance number and then go back to that. So, yeah,
yeah. When they
I don't.
did that, Gene Kelly was the one who said, "Well, they're going to expect us to do a little dance number together." And Fred's like, "Yeah, yeah, that would be okay." But Gene was like already coming up with these really impressive. And he's like, "Well, first of all, I'm a lot older than Gene Kelly. We're both in our 80s here." And it's like, you got to remember, I'm not a whippersnapper anymore. And Gene's like, hitting the whip, and he's like reminding Gene Kelly, "I'm older than you, remember?" So it's nice that we got a chance to see them actually.
Well, plus it's also a shame that the two of them didn't actually do much movies together.
I know.
During the
Yeah.
time they only did a couple, which includes That's Entertainment, and I forget what the other one was called. It's out of my head at the moment, but if you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
I'm.
yeah.
It's drawing a blank right now.
But yeah,
Um,
two of the fabulous dancers during the golden age of Hollywood. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Is there old musicals that you love the soundtrack for, like the big grand, you know?
I can't really pick an answer to this question because I always love watching the movie and loving the music at the same time.
Oh, Corda's getting private calls. She's muted. Yeah.
Um, if I had to choose it, I think it would may have to be a couple of black and white movies. I think Hella Zoppin, I think that's what it's called. Can't really
Hell's a
pronounce the
poppin'?
name.
Hell's a poppin'?
Yeah, I think so. That's it.
Very cool.
Which, like, I mean, it may not be the best movie, but, I love the soundtrack to it, you know?
Well, I soundtracks, I guess, like sometimes the soundtracks are superior to the movies. And a lot of times the soundtracks have done better than the movies and vice versa and stuff like that. And then, there's lots of times where you'll see a musical and think, I wish there was better music in it, because it's touted as a. And then sometimes it all comes together beautifully, like a Wizard of Oz or
Yep.
and even like a score, like Gone with the Wind or Doctor Zhivago, like that. I remember watching Doctor Zhivago, and that Laura's theme was in my head for days after. And just like I was hearing, I think it's mandolins or like,
Yep.
what now, my love? And I was like, it's in my head still. It's in my head.
I'll be right back, guys.
Okay, no
All
problem.
right.
Oops, she's got personal stuff going on. Are you a fan of some of my favorites? Rocky Horror Picture Show and Phantom of the Paradise.
um,
Are you familiar with these as much?
I'm very familiar with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'll be honest, it's not one of my favorite musicals of the 1970s, but it most certainly is a good one. Like I mean, made Tim Curry into a huge star, particularly since his native in Britain. Because he's obviously British. Also, Susan Sarandon, got her start there. A lot of people got their
Melo.
start. Yep, in that movie. But I always liked the costume designs
Yeah.
within the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I think is fantastic. And obviously, it looks like Tim Curry dressed up like a girl, in my personal opinion, which he kind of did. So,
Well, yeah, he's a
he was
sweet
good.
transvestite, right?
That's right. But he was good in the movie, and I wish the movie was actually nominated for a lot of Academy Awards because it it does take guts of portraying, the trifesta to, few other stuff.
Yeah, it didn't really. Well, again, it was a flop movie that became a midnight cult movie. And I think what I love about it is even if people haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture, most people know the time warp and stuff like that. So it's quite nice that. And what I also like about it too is that it's actually a cult movie, but it's still a dark movie, but it's almost taken on a family edge to it. Like, you see
Especially,
younger
the especially the younger generation, right? If you want to watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show, think of the movies of Tim Burton or something like that. It's sort of similar, but this
Yeah,
was
and
back,
and I
in
think
the
it
70s.
was for me it was a very important movie because I think it kind of like when you went to the midnight showings, I was lucky to get to go to them before they stopped doing them here in the Hamilton area. The Broadway Cinema, which was a little theater on King William, used to show it once a month, I believe. And I got to go to it. And what was nice was for people who were different or felt different, it's a very welcoming movie. It's a movie that lets you know that it's okay to be different, and I think that's such a good, like, um, like a good moral, like a good moral.
Hmm.
Like it's, like it was welcoming, and I know so many people that I meet that said, "Oh my God, I was hiding who I was, and then I saw Rocky Horror, and it kind of got me out of my shell." And I think any movie that can thing, and I've always liked the music of it. I actually think some of the music in Phantom of the Paradise is actually prettier. Um, but I hate the fact that Brian De Palma, who did Phantom of the Paradise, always never let us hear the songs. There's some talking over it, and it's beautiful. Paul Williams did such a great job. One of my favorite composers, and just because he wrote very different styled, melancholy kind of songs that were could have been really depressing, but still had hope in them and stuff. And I'm glad that Phantom of the Paradise did score an Oscar nomination for original score. It didn't win, but I was so happy. Is there newer movies that you think of that have a really great soundtrack? Because one pops into my head that's couple of years old now, but is there any? Because I know we talk a lot about vintage stuff, but I thought I'd shake it up and see if there's any newer movies that you remember recently saying, "Oh, I love that," whether it's an orchestral score or musical.
I actually have quite a few. Actually, I loved Nebraska. I loved that soundtrack of back in 2013 by Mark Orton. I always thought that, it was, it's a great soundtrack and it's slow and it's smooth. And, I always enjoyed listening to that. I also liked, La La Land, which of course that's a, very, very, very popular recent, Oscar nominated to winning, musicals, particularly in this time period. I like the fact that, they made it, similar to what the old Hollywood musicals
Yeah,
were,
there's
and it
especially
actually
some
does
of the
prove it
scenes.
show.
Yeah, some of the scenes are just phenomenal in that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, well, I always liked the soundtrack a lot. It's very catchy, and like I said, it does feel like, hey, you're actually watching an old Hollywood musical into, a modern audience, right? And that's, that's very important. And I said this, before that if you want to watch, movies or actually try to make movies, and if you want to be a filmmaker, you can actually get those inspirations from those old, type of Hollywood movies and actually kind of make it something similar
Yeah.
to, movies today, right? And that's, that's actually the most important factor in the world of filmmaking.
Yeah, two of the new ones I'll mention that I praise all the time when I get a chance is Sing Street. Have you seen that film?
I know about it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I most likely will definitely watch it. That's for sure.
It's a wonderful film. I did a misunderstood movies about it, and I am glad that more and more people are discovering this movie. It definitely is. It's more of a comedy drama, but there's music all the way through it, and it uses the music to build the characters, which I think is a unique way of using a soundtrack. So definitely check that out. And yeah, lots of 80s music in it and 80s inspired music. And the other one that I want to mention, because this is kind of another way I like how soundtracks are used, because when people say movie soundtracks, you usually think of, a sweeping score or something. But I like when the music is actually feels like it's a character. And I would say the movie Baby Driver introduced me to a whole bunch of new songs, and the music is actually used in ways that move the characters and help the story, and I think I, I'm impressed by it. And I walked away with so many great new music that I loved, and I think the soundtrack adds so much, and I think the movie itself is great, but the soundtrack is just mind blowing to me because well, the whole thing is, have you seen Baby Driver?
I have seen it a long time ago, but I do remember who the actors are in the
Yeah.
movie.
Well, because the lead character always listens to a Walkman to take away the humming in his ears that he has ringing. The songs always seem to fit the mood and stuff, and it's kind of neat because how they use it is just so neat, and I just think that's great. I love when movies play where the music and not just talking like a musical, like obviously when you see Grease, they're singing a song to advance the story, but what I mean is when they actually use music from the past or something to, like, to me it seems like it's a character in the film. I'm drawing a blank on a movie like that. I'm thinking Natural Born Killers uses a lot of different styles of music to get the tone. One minute you're listening to Nine Inch Nails, and then you got Patsy Cline.
Yep.
And if you know what Natural Born Killers is, it's in your face already. But I remember coming out of that movie going, "Oh my God, I think I'd love to direct a movie one day," just because it was so everything was just like exploded onto me, and definitely the soundtrack too. It was kind of like Oliver Stone was trying to be like Tarantino, because
Yep.
Tarantino uses old music, and I know
Well, it's
Tarantino.
well, it's the same thing with Martin Scorsese, right? Because
Yes,
he uses a lot of all the old classic '70s and '80s music in many of his films.
yeah. Even a lot of the Frank Sinatra stuff they used in Joker
Yep.
is very Scorsese, because you can't watch Joker and not see Scorsese all over that film.
Yep.
It blows my mind that he was actually going to direct it at one point, and it's funny that Todd Phillips. Well, you kind of did direct it, because Todd Phillips, that was a homage to you and stuff like that. Any before we wrap up here, any other soundtracks you want to give a shout out to that we haven't mentioned yet? I know there's so many, it's almost impossible, but maybe ones you've been listening to recently.
Um, if I have to pick a soundtrack album for anybody to listen to, it probably would have to be, in my personal opinion. Not a lot of people don't have to agree with me on this, but Gigi, back in 1958.
Interesting.
Because
But
hey,
tell me why you like that so much.
what's that?
Explain why you like it and you would like to share it with people.
I just love, like the setting, the costume designs, and the cinematography within the movie and the lighting effects. It does make you feel like, oh, you're actually in Paris. You're like actually there, right?
Yeah.
And I always thought that that movie was, a genius. And I remember it used to be on TCM all the time, for here in Canada, but for some particular reason, the US feed can't allow us to play Gigi here and on TCM, like to play here in Canada anymore due to the copyrights, and I just like
That's
that doesn't
weird.
make any sense, you
Yeah,
know.
it was a Best Picture winner.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we Heather and I recently saw it, and we didn't have the best time with it. There was a couple songs in it I liked, but I actually was a little disappointed by it. But I do get what you said. The sets and the costumes were
They were.
phenomenal, and it does have that feel.
Mhm.
Um, I just, I'm shocked at a lot of the older musicals stop being musicals sometimes.
Yep.
You know what I mean by that? Like I recently saw Funny Girl and absolutely loved the
Fun
beginning,
movie.
all the music and stuff, and then the music kind of disappears after a while because it takes a dramatic tone,
Well, I think
and
the
it's
movie kind
always
of,
surprising. Pardon?
I think the movie kind of dragged a little bit at some levels.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it was good at the beginning, and then all of a sudden, when she got married to, you know, um, Omar Sharif's character, then it became, kind of fell flat a little bit, and then went up to the top, and then it's kind of like, a zigzag or a mountain.
Yeah, I
It
remember
did.
kept thinking that I enjoying this, but where'd all the music go? I was enjoying the musical performances. This is Barbara Streisand. you know,
And also another soundtrack I'll point out is you want to listen to something, listen to West Side Story. It really shows that depth, the character involvement, and it's a great movie. You know.
I saw it years ago and I really liked it. And then I took Corda. We went to see it at the Playhouse Cinema. They actually showed it one summer night, and I was even more mesmerized because this was made to be seen on the big screen. And that's why I love little theaters like the Playhouse, because I got a
Mm-hmm.
chance to go see some of these, because some movies are fine on the small screen.
They
But
are.
then when you see, like, I liked West Side Story when I saw it on the little screen. I thought, what great music, the tone, everything about it. Then I saw it on the big screen and I said, "Oh my god, everybody needs to see it on this size." Now, are you interested at all in the Spielberg remake coming out?
I have thought about it. I
Yeah.
won't lie to you. I have thought about it.
Well, we have to. You brought it up. We have to touch on
Um, obviously, I never was a huge fan of movie remakes. I'm not gonna lie to you, because usually when they make a remake to some of your favorite movies, it doesn't really tend to be as successful as the original, in my
sometimes.
personal
Yeah, yeah.
opinions. I mean, I think the only remake that was successful was King Kong, in 2005 to all the way back in 1933. I mean, that actually set the full story of it. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
when
liked.
when
I
you see
love.
when you see remakes, they always tend to change some scenes, change the story up a little bit, try to make it as better,
I
than
think
the
there
original.
has been some, but I think the key is that I'm always shocked when they remake great movies, like, because there's so much mediocre movies that could be remade. Like sometimes I've seen old movies and said, I think that's ready for a remake because they could expand on it. But when they go and remake something that's a classic, so when I heard that Spielberg was redoing West Side Story, I go, okay, this is like one of the greatest directors of all time, and he's
Well,
remaking
he he
one of the
he never
greatest.
really made musicals before in his life,
No.
right?
Well,
You
I
know.
recently did a. I recently just recorded misunderstood movies for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And if you remember the opening sequence, he actually has the nightclub
Yep,
scene,
I
and
remember.
he
Yep.
goes, and he does it up. And I remember watching an interview preparing for this, and he says that the reason he decided to do a big production number is because he's never done a musical. And people forget that he has still never done a musical. So I am excited to see Spielberg do a musical. I'm shocked he would decide, let's remake one of the greatest musicals of all time. That's where I'm really shocked, because West Side Story, I would say, is almost perfect.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, yeah, we'll see how
Yeah.
successful he does once it comes out, this Christmas. But I think well, what's going to make the movie really good is Rina Moreno, um, not only being an executive producer for this movie, but also acting in the movie as well, because in the original, if you remember, she played Anita, and in this one, she's playing a female, version of Doc who wants that drug or that candy shop.
Yeah.
So I think, that'll be interesting to see, you know, how she's going to accomplish from, playing this role to how she played Anita back then.
Well, the thing I'm excited about is one, Spielberg's a competent director. So he obviously has his own vision and he loves the movie. Again, that would make me wonder why you want to tackle that when you could, like, there's so many smaller musicals from the past that could be remade and nobody would even know it was a remake. But what I do am excited for is I hope a younger generation sees this movie and loves it, but also decides to go back and see the original. And that's one thing I do like about remakes is if it piques your interest to go back to see the original. Because in a lot of ways, I think that's really kind of great when people like, oh, I want to see what that's like. And if it gets you into that, that's a great thing. So I think it's one of my most anticipated movies just because I'm so shocked that Spielberg, it'd be like Chris Nolan saying, I'm going to remake Jaws. It's like somebody saying, I'm going to go and do something that's already considered to be a perfect movie and try to make it better. You know? And so that's why I was surprised. I was also surprised that Spielberg wanted to tackle. He was toying with doing Clockwork Orange for a long
He
time
was.
too, and yeah, I'm kind of glad he avoided that. And that's another soundtrack I really like. It's not one I put on for calm music, but that syntho stuff at the beginning of Clockwork Orange and some of the weird little "I want to be your lighthouse keeper." I love that kind of stuff. I have to be in the mood for it, but it is a fun soundtrack.
Yeah, that's for
Since we are
sure.
still talking
It
sound.
is. You know, most certainly is. That's for sure.
I think personally, I don't know, as a movie fan, I don't mind remakes and I understand why they do them, but I think there are certain movies that should get a fence around them. Do you agree with that? Like,
Yeah, I think
you,
so. Yeah, I think there should be, a fence around, some of those lower budget, musicals or movies that actually deserve to get, remade to try and make it a little bit, more better than the original.
yeah, and it's funny because like when I go into watching a remake, I try to do the best I can with wiping the original out and trying to watch it as its own entity. And I'm not one of those ones that it's like, oh, this ruined the last. It's not going to ruin it. I'm going to still love the
No.
original movie. I'm interested to see what their take on let's make it better. And I won't lie, couple remakes I like better than the original. But it doesn't happen that often. But I just think certain movies we should just stay away from. And I would say West Side Story should maybe be in that category. But I can't wait. I really can't wait to see how it plays. And yeah, it'll be fun to see. But yeah, I think some movies like Star Wars. But being an old guy, I'm starting to live through seeing remakes of movies I used to love as a kid. So I'm starting to go through that phase. So I now know how my dad felt when he took me to movies that were remakes to him, but for me they were new movies.
Yep.
My dad would be like, "Oh, they did this," like if we saw Robin Hood, it's like, well, Errol Flynn did that already. And I'm like,
Yep.
well, Dad, you can still watch these other Robin Hoods,
Yep.
and it's not going to kill what Errol Flynn did. You know? But I'm getting to the point. I don't consider myself that old, and now I've seen I've seen remakes to like Psycho, Footloose, Grease. Technically, I've seen remakes to like movies like. I'm shocked. They attempted doing Rocky Horror Picture Show. They've attempted to do like I'm mind blown by some of the things that I've seen already. So Will I see a Jaws remake? Probably. Somebody's going to do it eventually. But yeah, okay, I'm getting off my soapbox now. Heather, what are some of your favorite music? We're going to put you on the spot. What are some of your favorite soundtracks? And then we will judge you. No, we're...
I don't know. I just like anything that's got music in it. Really, it's you
Well,
know that I like the Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff, and Les Mis, uh, Hairspray. Um, there, there's just too many to actually start listing them all. You know.
Hairspray is awesome because it's got two awesome soundtracks. You got the John Waters one that has amazing old music, and then you have that musical that wrote some phenomenal music for it. So that was a good choice.
Yeah.
Hairspray has really two great soundtracks, definitely for different modes and stuff.
Actually, that was on last week on TCM the other night.
Oh, nice.
Which one, the John Waters or the remake?
Yeah, the original Hairspray back in '88.
See
because they're doing the theme of body images in the movies, you know, and stuff like that. So that Muriel's Wedding to Precious, they'll make a TCM premiere.
And I just watched that. Now that you say that, YouTube showed them had a little featurette on body image with Alicia Malone, I think.
Yeah,
was on.
Alicia Malone. Yep.
Yeah, and I just watched that, and they said Hairspray was one of the first movies to actually deal with a positive body image, and I always liked Hairspray for that because of the fact that they don't ever, like, usually when they did movies like that, they would always be like, how are you going to change? You know, but Hairspray, she never did. She was like always confident. She was always that. And I think that's why John Waters let them do the musical, because they understood that and they ran with that. And yeah, people don't think of Hairspray being such a groundbreaking film when John Waters made it, because we think of John Waters as, you know, the guy who gives us all these filthy, dirty little movies that I love so much. But Hairspray was really his Trojan horse. That I remember when he released it, he said that the production company was upset because all his movies get R ratings, and when they sent Hairspray, they said no, it's going to just be an adult contemporary and adult accompaniment. That's what it was at the time. And he said, well, yeah, that's cool. And they were like, well, maybe we should make it an R, because you're known for R-rated dirty movies, right? And he goes, well, why don't we use this as our way of getting in? And then Hairspray, within a couple of years, became one of the top movies for teenage girls to watch during slumber parties. So John Waters went from these divine movies that were groundbreaking for their own reasons to making this movie about positive body image. So wow. Oh, as you can see, I can talk about anything. So we're going to end it right here. I hope you had a great time, Dylan.
I most certainly did. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for reaching out and letting me come on your show today. It is a great honor, being here, and I really do hope we can do this again soon, because I also, like you said, you like talking to me about movies. I also like talking to you about movies as well. So,
well, whether we do another podcast or we just hang out and talk about movies, it sounds like from what we've talked about earlier today, we could probably talk about television shows as well.
Oh, for sure.
Because Gilligan's Island, when you were talking about it, I just recently watched something about, you probably know this, and I'm going off on a tangent, but apparently they have now officially said that when they wrote that script, that the 7 castaways are the 7 deadly sins.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I did hear about that.
Yeah, everybody had questioned it, but I think Sherwood Schwartz, before he passed away, finally admitted that when he wrote it, it was that. And I recently also found out that they got rid of something from the pilot script that everybody didn't want, except Sherwood Schwartz, and they actually talked him out of it, and I'm glad they did. There was supposed to be dinosaurs on.
Yeah, that's what I knew.
Really?
Yeah, I heard about that,
Wow.
as well. Yep.
And they were trying to find nice ways to say, I don't think the dinosaurs are going to work, and we don't have the technology to make it look good.
No.
Oh my God. Yeah, I look forward to talking to you, whether on a podcast or something else. And yeah, I look forward to it. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us again where you can catch your radio show now that we got everybody nice and interested in all the different styles of music you listen to.
Absolutely. Yeah, so please tune in, every Saturday afternoon on if you live in the city of Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, or, some of our listeners out there, listening through different parts of the world. You can catch Vintage Cinema Music with Dylan Cardoni that airs every Saturday afternoon between 12 to 2 o'clock p.m. You can listen to it, as I just said, on 101.5 The Hawk, or go on to the Hawk website at www.1015hawkmohawkcollege.ca, and you can listen to the radio show there. Or if you have a chance to listen to past shows, please go into the archives to click on Vintage Cinema Music, and you can listen to past shows as well of
Nice.
what we aired this past every week. Sorry, this past Saturday.
Excellent. And yeah, and I hope people do that. And I'm glad you guys have an archive that you can go listen to the past music in case it's just not available during those times, that you can listen to it anytime. Because honestly, soundtracks never get, there's no wrong time. Early in the morning, late at night, whenever you want to.
That's
Anyhow,
right.
thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you, Corda, always being here. And thank you out there for watching. We've had a great time. I had a great time. I'm smiling big. And we will see you very soon on the Devlin Bishop
Yeah.
Show.